Welcome to This Explainer, everyone. I am so excited you're here today because we are diving deep into the absolutely fascinating lit RPG world of Dreamweaver. Now, if you're already familiar with the lit RPG genre, you know how incredibly engaging it is when real-world mechanics just violently collide with gamified scenarios, right? It's the bread and butter of the genre. But I gotta tell you, this specific storyline, it takes that concept to an entirely new level. It brilliantly merges real-world agricultural science, emergency wilderness first aid, and standard game UI mechanics into one intense life-or-death crisis. We are looking at a brutal endurance event known in-game as Level 5 Cancer. And what makes this narrative so incredibly captivating is the severe genre whiplash the audience and the players experience. Think about it. Our characters have spent their entire playthrough up to this point mastering what essentially feels like a cozy, relaxing farming simulator. But then suddenly, and completely without warning, the safety rails are just gone. The game pivots hard, forcing these peaceful cultivators to immediately become frontline medical responders in a high-stakes emergency room built out of nothing but dirt and raw crops. The stakes here are absolutely massive. The characters aren't just trying to maximize their crop yields anymore. No, they have to use every single thing they've learned and every single item they've meticulously grown to solve a grueling medical puzzle and literally save a life. So get comfortable and settle in because we are going to thoroughly explore this massive challenge, step by step, and figure out how they survive it. So the whole ordeal officially kicks off with an ominous message from the main character's dad. He sends this cryptic note. At times, to cure a seemingly incurable wound, all you need is to buy enough time with the proverbial shell of the crab. And then he actually follows this up by hoping their bark is far worse than their bite. It's a total riddle. This warning definitively signals the end of the peaceful planting phase we've gotten used to and marks the beginning of a grueling battle of endurance. But what exactly does the shell of the crab mean in a medical context, and why the weird wordplay about bark? Well, that mystery is exactly what we are going to decode today.
Here is our quest log for today. First, the Level 5 crisis. Second, the Farming Foundation. Third, decoding the cancer system. Fourth, emergency first aid first. And finally, number 5, the nutritional cure. Let's jump right in.
Section 1, the Level 5 crisis.
Okay, I want you to vividly picture this scene. San and Ciela are standing in their quiet, peaceful tropical camp. They're just discussing the cryptic clues they received from that riddle. The environment is super calm. Then, out of nowhere, a figure staggers out of the dense wilderness. You can tell every single step is a massive, agonizing effort for this person. And the very second this happens, a literal game clock materializes in the air right above them. It snaps from 0 to exactly 24 hours and immediately starts ticking down. Boom. The figure collapses into an unconscious heap in the dirt. They rush over, and it's a young boy, right around their age. But his body is sporting these vicious, deep wound marks that look unmistakably like they came from the fangs of a massive wild beast. The physical toll on the boy is horrifying to look at. He is pale, he's sweating profusely, and he is actively dying right in front of them. The psychological shock to San and Ciela is instantaneous. The tension in that camp goes from 0 to 100 in a fraction of a second. There is no time to strategize, no time to look up a guide or a walkthrough. They have exactly one day, one ticking 24-hour countdown to solve a biological puzzle they barely understand, or this boy dies in their camp.
But San, our quick-thinking protagonist, actually figures out the core riddle brilliantly. The system they are battling is called cancer, which is represented by a crab icon. While San realizes that if you spell the word crab backwards, you get bark or bark. Now, this isn't about dogs barking, obviously. It's a direct reference to an ancient medical proverb. You see, in the ancient world, the bark of certain specific trees was absolutely crucial for concocting antivenoms for poisonous bites. So, for a lethal ailment to be cured, the medicinal bark literally needed to be stronger than the venomous bite. This is such a brilliant illustration of the lit RPG wordplay at the heart of this episode. The heroes realize right then and there that they are no longer just surviving farmers. They must become farming doctors relying entirely on ancient medical logic to outsmart the game system.
Section 2, the Farming Foundation. But here's the thing. To be farming doctors, you first need to actually nail the farming part, right? Long before this crisis hit, San and Saito focused heavily on cultivating non-perishable plants. We're talking cereals, grains, and tubers. They used very simple, highly effective real-world logic. They would just dry the crops out in the blinding sun to completely strip the moisture and prevent decay. It's practical, it's grounded in reality. But I want to contrast that with Arlene and Mitsuki, who are playing over on the other side of the map. Their assigned land wasn't fertile enough for crops at all, so they had to focus entirely on breeding animals. Now, the massive problem there is that animal products, like meat and dairy, expire incredibly fast. Mitsuki, however, comes up with this mind-blowing contingency plan that perfectly blends real-world science with high fantasy mechanics. If their food starts to rot, she plans to use her specialized gravitational magic to drastically reduce the flow of time specifically on the bacteria acting on the food. Let that sink in for a second. She's literally applying the core scientific concept of refrigeration, which, if you think about it, is just slowing down bacterial activity. But she's using Lit RPG time magic to manipulate the gravitational field around the microbes. It is a breathtakingly creative way to secure their inventory, and it really shows the depth of this game's mechanics.
And securing that inventory wasn't just about gathering massive random piles of food, it was entirely about hyper-organization. Sand's team didn't just throw their entire harvest into one big storage shed and call it a day. No, they built multiple specialized storage facilities and meticulously categorized every single thing they grew. They separated their yields specifically by chemical makeup, so they put grains, cereals, and tubers in one facility. Fruits and vegetables went into another. Oil-producing nuts were in a third, and protein-producing legumes in a fourth. Now, in a standard farming simulator, this might just seem like good housekeeping or maybe just aesthetic roleplay for the players. But as we are about to see, deliberately separating these specific chemical and nutritional food groups into distinct silos forms the absolute bedrock of solving the complex medical challenge that just crashed into their camp.
Section 3. Decoding the cancer system. Okay, so the sudden notification they receive finally explains the mechanics of this cancer system. In the world of Dreamweaver, cancer isn't a specific real-world disease like we know it. Rather, it operates as a highly sophisticated diagnostic interface. The game system constantly measures a debilitating stat, which in this terrifying case is the mysterious and aggressive beast venom pumping through the boy's veins, against the required physical parameters needed to cure it. The fundamental rule of this system is fascinatingly absolute. Ailments are only completely cured when all your specific recovery stats hit a perfect 100. And here is the kicker. You achieve this not by just chugging a potion or clicking a magical heal button. You do it by actively applying recovery items, medicinal tools, or meticulously grown food items you've acquired during the gameplay phase. It's a perfect gamification of a biological immune response. It takes the invisible, complex war happening inside the human body and turns it into a readable, actionable user interface.
So let's look at the specific target stats they need to max out to save this boy. They include cellular regeneration, energy boost, immunity boost, mental fortitude, poison coagulation, poison mitigation, and vitality. Now, when Sand first uses his UI to scan the poison boy, these stats are dangerously low. I mean, they are hovering in the 20s to 40s, and they are rapidly dropping as the clock ticks. But Sand does something incredibly clever here, which really showcases his analytical mindset. Instead of just panicking and guessing what to do, he actually turns and scans his perfectly healthy teammate, Ciala, to establish a biological baseline. He discovers Ciala's stats are incredibly high. Her mental fortitude alone is sitting comfortably in the upper 80s and early 90s. By placing the boy's plummeting stats side by side with Ciala's healthy ones, Sand effectively creates a scientific control group right there in the game. He can clearly see exactly where the poison is doing the most critical damage, transforming a panicked, chaotic medical emergency into a solvable, comparative math problem.
Section 4. Emergency First Aid First.
But before they can even think about nutrition, they have to stabilize him. Sand executes a textbook 3-step wilderness first aid sequence using primitive game items, and honestly, it is brutally intense to watch unfold. Step 1. Sand tightly binds the boy's limb right between the vicious bite wound and the upper body. The goal here is simple but absolutely critical: sever the blood flow. He has to stop the venom from being pumped back to the heart and circulated to the brain, or it's game over immediately. Step 2. He takes a freshly sterilized blade and purposefully makes a new, small incision directly over the bite marks to manually bleed out as much localized venom as possible. Step 3. This is where the sheer brutality of survival medicine really kicks in. To prevent the boy from bleeding out from that brand new incision, Sand takes a sharpened stone he had previously heated in a roaring flame, presses it directly against the open flesh, and cauterizes the wound shut. The smell, the sound, the visceral reality of burning flesh to save a life, it's an incredibly intense, fast-paced sequence, but it works. It successfully stops the immediate bleeding and buys them the precious hours they desperately need to figure out the rest.
Now, what brilliantly illustrates the vast scope of this lit RPG world is how the other scattered teams handle their own identical medical emergencies simultaneously. It's a fantastic contrast in problem-solving logic. Over on the coast, Kieran throws his severely poisoned patient straight into a makeshift tub of highly concentrated seawater. Why? Osmosis. He harnesses the hard, real-world science of water naturally moving across cellular membranes to equalize salt levels, literally draining the venom out through the patient's pores. Meanwhile, Ariel relies purely on high fantasy mechanics. She uses her unique Blaze ability, which is a high-tier flame magic that operates strictly on the elemental balance of fire dispelling darkness and corruption, to literally burn the venomous curse right off her patient's soul. Whether it's brutal wilderness triage, molecular chemical science, or pure elemental magic, the game allows for incredibly diverse, specialized solutions to stabilize their patients.
Section 5. The nutritional cure. This is where it all comes together.
So, the boy is temporarily stabilized. San takes his diagnostic scanner and runs straight into their meticulously organized storage facilities. Remember those 4 specific silos we talked about earlier? Well, here is exactly where that obsessive preparation pays off in spades. San scans the food and realizes a brilliant design choice by the game developers. The game maps real-world nutritional science directly to the cancer system's fantasy stats. It's amazing. To buff cellular regeneration and provide the literal biological building blocks to replace damaged tissues, the body needs heavy amounts of protein. That maps perfectly to their stored leguminous nuts. To stop the patient from going into a physical crash and to heavily buff the energy boost stat, they need immediate accessible sugar and starch, which means turning to their massive stockpile of grains and tubers. To max out the immunity boost scale and help the boy's white blood cells actually fight the infection, it's all about vitamins, naturally found in their fresh fruits and vegetables. San has effectively created a gamified, highly specific medical prescription based entirely on cultivating a perfectly balanced agricultural diet. It's absolutely brilliant.
But there is one stat on the UI that stands out as the most critical hurdle: poison coagulation. This is where San drops some deeply fascinating chemical logic on us. He explains to his team that they have to prioritize an oily diet, specifically utilizing their oil-producing nuts as their absolute very first step in feeding the boy. Now, the science here is vital, and it's something a lot of people might get wrong. You might assume a sick person needs water, right? But water and liquid-heavy diets have a very high ability to dissolve substances. If you feed the poisoned boy liquids like water or thin broth to comfort him, you are actively helping the venom dissolve and spread much faster through his already weakened system. You would literally be killing him with kindness. But venom doesn't dissolve well in oil. Instead, it coagulates. It clumps up. The heavy organic oil acts as a dense chemical seal inside the body, trapping the poison in place so the boy's organs have the necessary time to process and expel it safely. It's a stunningly detailed, high-stakes application of real-world chemistry used to solve a fantasy game debuff.
San then takes a moment to explain why they shouldn't just scour the environment for a magical healing potion or rely on blind medication to speed up the process. He uses a brilliant, universally understood, real-world analogy: Coca-Cola and Mentos. We all know that both of those items are perfectly safe to consume on their own, right? But if you mix them together in a confined space, you get a violent, explosive chemical reaction. San realizes that aggressively introducing a random, highly potent chemical medication into a biological body that is already desperately fighting an unknown, complex venom could accidentally brew a lethal, explosive concoction right in the boy's veins. Sometimes doing too much with medicine is far, far more dangerous than doing exactly what the body asks for and nothing more.
And that brings us to the ultimate takeaway, the grand solution to outsmarting level 5. It's elegantly simple yet incredibly profound. A truly balanced organic diet can cure more ailments than 1,000 blind medications. In this perilous state, where a terrifying countdown is literally ticking away seconds on a fragile life, relying on organic substitutions over processed, inorganic foods or rapid chemical cures is the absolute key to stabilizing the patient. By meticulously feeding the boy the exact right combination of organic fats to coagulate the poison, proteins to rebuild the cells, starches for energy, and vitamins for immunity, they empower the body's natural cancer system to fight back on its own terms. They utilize the proverbial shell of the crab, that hard defensive patience of waiting out the ailment, to simply outlast the venom. It's a thrilling look at how Dreamweaver takes standard lit RPG tropes and just injects them with heavy, deeply researched doses of real-world biology, chemistry, and agricultural planning. Seeing these characters transform from farmers to medical responders through the power of nutrition is incredible. And honestly, it really makes you think about the real-life biological stats you are buffing, or perhaps nerfing, every single day with your own dietary choices. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final provocative question. If a debilitating stat hit you today, could your pantry provide the cure? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.